To Pauline Tully.
Minister, I'd just like to ask you what steps you are taking in relation to assessing the childcare needs of parents in County Cavan, where many service providers are indicating they're no longer taking children under 2 years of age. And I suppose they're claiming it's due to financial strain under regulations, early years services regulations under the Childcare Act. And also what consideration has been given to forward planning for places, childcare places and service provisions in County Cavan and indeed at national level.
Dr. Huntara.
Thanks, Deputy. Officials in my department closely monitor developments in relation to early learning and childcare capacity, including the supply of and demand for places. Before the outset of COVID, data gathered through the annual Early Years Sector Profile Survey revealed that the sector was running at near capacity, with evidence of undersupply for certain cohorts, including children under 3 and certain areas, including in Cavan. And this evidence informed the allocation of funding under the department's annual capital programme. We've been able to increase capacity since 2015 by 27,433 places nationally, and of those 494 additional places have been funded in Cavan. And since the outset of COVID, there has been evidence of some depressed demand for early learning and childcare due to changes in parental working arrangements. Obviously, the very substantial COVID supports that we've put in place for the childcare sector has ensured that we haven't seen a loss of services, and we've maintained the same number of services in 2020 that we had in 2019. And ensuring supply is sufficient to meet demand, particularly once work patterns stabilise after COVID, is a key priority for my department. So we're doing the field work for the annual early years sector profile at the moment. This will allow us to update our data on capacity, and that will inform our capital investment plans and prioritisation for future capital funding. The cost of delivering early learning and childcare is higher for children under the age of 2. This is because of the higher child-adult ratios, but we also give higher subventions under the NCS for younger children as well. So the maximum weekly subsidy rate for children under 1 is €229.50, and for children aged 1 to 2 is €195.75. And these rates exceed the average full-time fees for children under 1 and aged between 1 and 2 in Cavan, which our department, from the data we've gathered, says €166.33 and €165.36 respectively. So this year's early years sector profile survey, it will also include an income and costs module, and data from that module will form a key input into the setting of future funding rates, and will also be considered by the expert group I spoke about earlier.
Minister. I've been contacted with constituents. Now, one lady said to me, when her maternity leave finished and she tried to find a place for her little baby, she couldn't find one because no creches around her were taking a child under 1. She was forced to end up taking the 16 weeks additional unpaid maternity leave, even though that wasn't her intention, that isn't what she wanted to do. And she was worrying about what she would do when she had to actually return to work, because, you know, she was finding it extremely difficult. She'd even tried to source a childcare or a childminder in their own home as well, but they were charging exorbitant rates. And then recently another mother told me she'd one child in a creche of age 2, and then when she attempted to enrol her 10-month-old child in the creche, they told her they weren't taking any babies under 2. She tried 6 other creches and they all refused. Either they weren't taking babies or they were full and they had no waiting lists. So, I mean, again, she ended up, she was working from home, she was a civil servant, she was able to work from home, but she was trying to mind a 10-month-old, which you can know is try to work and have a 10-month-old in the house is practically impossible. So the review you're talking about there, I'm just wondering, what is the time frame for that?
Thanks, Deputy. And just, I suppose, you made the point about childminders, and one thing the government is advancing is the ability for childminders to be paid through the National Childcare Scheme as well. So the subvention that many parents get for centre-based childcare will also be available to childminders following registration. And I know that was discussed at the Joint Oireachtas Committee earlier today, and that's an important step forward. But look, I absolutely take the point. We can have I suppose, increases in demand both geographically but also across demographics as well. I think you've pointed to the fact that for children under 2, it's often harder for parents to provide services. So as I say, we're gathering that data in at the moment. We'd hope to have it in quarter 3 of this year, and that data will then guide the capital allocations that my department does in 2022 in terms of supporting new services.
Yeah, I suppose that is welcome, and the sooner the better, because it is at a crucial point at the moment, because, you know, there's a lack of availability, affordability, and there's a lack of retention of staff, and there's increasing fees for parents. So all of these things need to be dealt with. And I know this applies in Cavan and applies elsewhere also. But there's a severe lack of creche places in Cavan, and I'm also hearing there's a severe lack of community creche places as well. So for many in the workplace who can afford to pay what are quite high fees, for those who aren't in that position and therefore don't have a choice, either they have a community place offered to them and support, or they stay at home and mind their child, there are none. And I know there's a number of resource centres working with the Cavan Childcare Committee and with TUSLA and trying to source, you know, a premises for a community creche. So any support that can be given would be more than welcome. But I'm just, like many of the staff in childcare facilities we know are highly trained professionals, and yet they're paid what's basically the minimum wage or definitely under the living wage anyway. So I'm just wondering, is there something that can be done just going to see an increase for pay for the workers and a decrease in fees for parents?
Well, first of all, Deputy, no providers should be increasing fees at this time, because the state is providing a huge amount of support in terms of the upper rate of the employment wage subsidy scheme to all childcare providers across the country, regardless of the turnover rule. And that's a decision we made, and I know the vast majority of childcare providers really welcome that additional support and have acted fairly. So no provider should be increasing fees at this stage. I see no reason for that. But in terms of the wages, salaries paid to childcare professionals, I absolutely agree with you, and I was delighted a number of weeks ago when Minister English signed the commencement order for the Joint Labour Committee, a process that I initiated earlier this year to create a joint Labour Committee for the childcare sector, which will lead to an employment regulation order, which will set a salary scale for childcare professionals, and I think that's very valuable, and I'm very pleased to have been able to lead in that.